an unprecedented aid package for Ukraine. From Rome, it has become known that Italy has already prepared its 11th package of military support for official Kyiv. According to the Western press, as part of this package, Ukraine will likely receive the Italian version of the M113 tracked armored personnel carriers. It is assumed that inside there will be a stock of tracked tanks for troop transport. These are M113 tanks, developed in the mid-1950s to carry an equipped infantry squad and provide close-range fire support to troops. It is worth noting that this weapon is not new to the Ukrainian armed forces on the front lines. For more than a year now, this type of American equipment has been taking part in the fighting in Donbass.
The engine has 200 horsepower. Detroit, an American pure two-stroke turbo diesel.
Turbo diesel.
As for the Italian version of the M113 specifically, in 2024, the Camelinas appeared in service with the National Police, and the Pennine modification, which meets NATO standards, unlike the earlier M113 modifications supplied by allies, received additional side armor protection, which significantly improved the vehicle's characteristics.
This is already the 11th package of military aid to Kyiv. It was prepared in recent months during ongoing dialogue with allies. The war continues. A ceasefire is still just a mirage.
Meanwhile, as soon as Russian propaganda learned about the upcoming delivery of Italian armored vehicles to Ukraine, it began to criticize the American M113s in every possible way. Against the backdrop of what is almost the only captured AFU vehicle, the occupiers set out to completely trash Western equipment.
Well, regarding the advantages and disadvantages of the vehicle itself, well, what can I say? First of all, it's worth mentioning the poor off-road capability of this vehicle. In fact, that's why it was captured.
However, even this is a lie. As Ukrainian defenders explain, the American armored vehicle actually suffers from a completely different issue. On the contrary, for the AFU, it's actually too fast and too maneuverable.
What constantly needs maintenance for us are the road wheels. What kind of speeds are we talking about? We're driving at high speed, the track jumps, it cuts off the road wheels, completely cuts off the wheels and breaks them like that. It just slices off the wheel and that's it.
And even though the American vehicle dates back to the 50s, its constant deep modernization gives it an edge over Russian APCs. Even the occupiers themselves are forced to admit this in their own propaganda videos.
Among, let's say, the positive aspects of this vehicle, it's enough to mention the rear panel of the back hatch, because in addition to the hatch itself opening, the rear panel also opens. And basically, it's pretty much the same as on our vehicles. But here it's worth mentioning that for the troops, in order to disembark quickly, the entire ramp opens downward. Yes, of course, this makes it much more convenient for the troops to exit, and accordingly, it reduces the time needed for disembarkation. That's important.
Another advantage is that the structural aluminum can withstand small fragments. You can even see here that one fragment got stuck in this aluminum.
But that's far from everything the American M113 can use to surprise the enemy. What truly terrifies Russian soldiers is the armored vehicle's automatic fire control system. With it, eliminating the enemy becomes almost like playing a video game on the easiest level.
You can easily launch it with a single button.
With a single button, or more precisely a toggle switch, you activate the module's drive. Then comes the camera, and then the fire control module. There are 3 firing modes: single shot, short burst, and from 2 to 7 rounds.
From 2 rounds to 7.
Even the much-vaunted Russian army, praised by Putin with its deeply outdated APCs, could only dream of something like this.
Lock on.
Lock on! It tracks the target by itself. It tracks the target automatically. And if the box stays in place,
There's some kind of automatic target lock, and it holds it.
And according to Western media reports, Italy will deliver as many as 400 of these vehicles to Ukraine. And this is capable of significantly affecting the balance of power on the current front line. And it certainly won't allow the occupiers to successfully carry out the announced full-scale summer offensive.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
The Chancellor of Germany has promised to create the armed up, strongest army in Europe. In his first speech, Friedrich Merz stated that Germany must take greater responsibility for the security of the continent.
Issues of defense development and essentially the revival of the sense of a big, strong Germany. This is what Merz, the new chancellor, has taken up as his banner. Germany wants to restore its power. It wants to reclaim its leading position in Europe.
To realize its ambitions, Germany plans to increase defense spending and invest in the modernization of its armed forces. Merz noted that the country is obliged to fulfill its commitments to NATO and its partners.
Now, the situation is fundamentally changing. The European Union, and after all, Germany is the heart of the EU, the driving force behind its economic development. So the European Union is now facing unprecedented challenges, and in a whole range of areas, challenges it has never encountered before, certainly not in such numbers.
However, such ambitions raise questions. How will they affect the balance of power in Europe and relations with neighboring countries?
How will other European countries react to Germany's attempts to truly become autonomous from dependence on the United States, to develop its own European security framework, and to provide for this with its own arms production capabilities? Everyone will only applaud because the risks, for example, the risk of aggression from the Russian Federation, especially in Eastern European countries, are perceived as more than realistic. Merz's initiatives will be supported both within the European Union and by countries that see the risk of aggression from the Russian Federation, and not only from the Russian Federation.
It is known that Germany currently has 260,000 military personnel, while a fully staffed armed forces should number about 460,000 people.
Well, these are ambitious goals which are currently fully supported by the Germans. Merz currently enjoys a very high trust rating, and according to recent sociological data I saw, Germans support him and are ready to follow Merz in achieving these goals.
Germany is taking this seriously. The authorities are not limiting themselves to statements. Already in 2025, the defense budget is expected to increase by more than 15%. At the same time, large-scale investments in the army and military infrastructure are being planned.
This will also create opportunities for investment, because there is a lot of money in Germany that is looking for additional, let's say, niches for investment. These are jobs, and this is an absolutely new role for Germany, let me repeat now, not just as the economic driver and locomotive of the European Union, but as a country that is not only the heart, but essentially provides a steel shield for Europe and is ready to take on responsibility.
Strengthening the German army is not just a domestic task, but also an important signal to Russia. In the context of rising tensions in Europe, such steps could change Moscow's calculations and influence its strategy in the region. But will this reduce provocations and actions from the Kremlin?
Is it beneficial for the Russian Federation, for Germany to become strong? Obviously it is not. Because along with its strength, Germany will take on a leadership role in Europe and make Europe as a whole stronger. Again, this is absolutely categorically not in the interests of the Russian Federation. But will there be risks? Will the Russian Federation try to derail Germany's military course Of course, yes.
During his speech, Merz also emphasized Germany's firm support for Ukraine. He also threatened Russia with tough sanctions in the event of further aggressive actions. Strengthening the German army is not only about ensuring its own security, but also an important signal of solidarity with Ukraine and its partners.